But you did say that people could learn Python and things like that to sort of
Yeah.
secure themselves in the job market. But what I'm seeing is lots of programmers are being made redundant, and even some of the contractors that I'm in touch with, they're like talking about how much does it cost, how much they can make working as a forklift driver, this kind of stuff. So I don't know if this is just a one-off, but it shouldn't be worse market than what was in COVID, but it just feels like that right now.
So
I don't know whether it's
when I
permanent or not.
when I talked about Python and basically learning that as a language, and you can see that all the generative AI models that are being developed right now are Python based, right? The LLM is Python based. So we have to remember that GPT is operated off of prompt engineering, right? What the prompts that you're putting in, the specificities of what you're putting in to be able to create that action. So it's really not AI that's replacing the people. It's the people using AI that are ultimately creating this impact in the job market. But that being said, there's a massive demand. Like if you look at every single industry from financial services, manufacturing, retail CPG, you go down to healthcare, life sciences, and then you go down even further to public sector. Everything has a demand right now for generative AI, and everything also has a demand right now in being able to build out their own LLM, right? Being well, like what's their generative AI strategy? That's probably the biggest thing that you're going to hear from every single C-suite, whether it's the CIO, CTO, even the CEOs talking like, what is our generative AI strategy moving forward? So it's crazy because that's why you're seeing Nvidia, completely just destroy the market, right? Because they're the only ones that are providing that GPU to be able to process the amount of power that's needed to run these LLMs. So all these corporations have no choice but to go to Nvidia to be able to, make a deal with them to be able to get what they need from Nvidia, create that partnership so that they can build out their own LLMs and generative AI models. So it's
So when you say have their own LLM, are you talking about something like a ChatGPT that people can use for getting responses?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm talking about people being able to use their own data to create their own GPT model, essentially, right? Basically, you see, when we were talking back 6 months ago, GPT didn't have plugins, right? It's not GPT-4, and it wasn't also connected to the internet. We were talking about GPT when it was 3 and 3.5. Everything's changed now because ChatGPT, OpenAI, essentially turned it into a platform of where you have all these different plugins that you can now create embeddings for. I'm sure you saw recently. It could act as your own data analyst, right? You don't need coding experience to be able to analyze data sets, very complex data sets. And I think something that a lot of people seem to get a misunderstanding of is the AI LLM actually doesn't know anything. It's not a conscious entity of where you enter information and it spits out an answer. That it's not an encyclopedia, which is how people used to use GPT. What it is it's a response engine. And when we think about response engines, we think about it like, okay, I just injected an Alexandria library's worth of words into GPT, into this LLM. And now this LLM, for those of you listening, stands for large language model. So I injected an Alexandria library's worth of that inside of the way that I'm making my LLM, right? But when we think about it, okay, well, how are you going to be able to weight what is more important? And I'll give you a very clear example. GPT is a neural network. That's something that a lot of people need to understand is the way our brains work, just like how when I tell you, and I like to use this example because it's easy to follow, the sky is blue. When you hear that example, the only two things that goes to your mind is the sky and the color blue. You don't know what the or is in that sentence looks like. And if I say the sky is blue, the cloud is white. When I say that, you picture a white cloud in the sky now. What I mean by this is if you can imagine inside of GPT itself, all of the billions or millions of different points of words and data that it has in there, you're basically syncing it to have direct correlations where sky is here, blue is here, cloud is here, and then the next string and the next string and so on, like all these different points, right? That's how you're able to create an emphasis on correlation when you're typing in something specific to GPT. And if we want to get more complex, if we really want to dive in deeper, one of the things that we have to think about is the model itself of GPT. It's basically all of these words that are weighted in a 12,000 plus dimension framework that you can't comprehend. Like here, I'll give you an example. This right here is two dimensional, right? This is two dimensional. This line is one dimensional. You and me, we're three dimensional. I'm talking about 12,000 dimensions inside of GPT to be able to run the billions and billions of different points of data sets that are basically what I'm creating for neural network. How you process this information is, in addition to weighting the different words on how they are, like cloud, sky, blue, white, ball, red, and all this stuff, you create vector embeddings that now turn all of these words into a math problem. So that 12,000 dimension that was so incomprehensible is now boiled down to embeddings that GPT is able to process. So that's why every single prompt that you enter into GPT, you say, you are a, and then you give it a role, identity, or a framework, and you are looking to, and you give it an action, a use case, and something specific, and I am a, and you give yourself a role and what it is, and I am looking to X, Y, and Z. The way that you prompt engineer that, the reason why GPT is able to get so sophisticated with it is because it took all of the words, like every single word in the English language that's literally living there. It's now able to process that, understand that, and put itself in a framework of giving you the next best viable option. So GPT doesn't know anything, but the prompt engineering, the way that you put the prompts out there, what you're looking for, how specific it is, and anyone who's a GPT user that's currently listening to this will know that it takes a while to process, and it's like typing it out. And that's because it's searching throughout its embeddings. It's basically looking for the most viable, accurate information, right? Which is why you're seeing GPT 3 to 4 have a vast difference. The hallucination level is much lower. It's no longer hallucinating as much. It's getting very fine point and accurate to the data, to a very scary point, to where Elon Musk was basically signaling the red, alarm signals of saying like, hey, we got to slow down on production. It's because of the fact that everything that you're entering in there, you have to think of it like a response engine. Like you and I, if I were to ask you, well, why do you think the sky is blue? You can't come up with an answer. You go like, I look up at the sky, it's blue. And then I go, okay, well, why do you call that blue? And then you start to realize that the further you dig down, the more you start to actually ask these questions, you start to realize you don't know how you got to that answer. It's just that you were trained, you were taught, you learned that this is blue, this is sky, this is cloud. The same exact way in machine learning, how it's basically learning as a model, right? So that's why I'm saying that GPT is a neural network, the same way that our brain is a neural network. It's neural network in the most simplified sense, but that's why it's like a database of information and a response engine, not an encyclopedia.